Hello, BookTube. I'm Peg. I used to be the Book Prize addict, but I've had to change my BookTube name because I'm not going to be reading many book prizes this year. And then I added my other hobbies of knitting and crochet. I'm still mainly a booktuber, but I am wearing a new scarf I just crocheted. Anyway, so I shared in my last video that one of my big changes for the New Year's, I was going to try reading from my shelves, not bringing physical books in, buying them, or maybe even go in the library, though I can check out electronic books from the library. So I've spent the last 4 days since the New Year going through my mini books. These aren't my books, these are my husband's books. So don't look there. Okay, and seeing what I had, what I wanted to read. There's a lot of them I'd forgotten about that I've had for years, so I think it'll be a fun project. But while I was doing that, I actually came up with some other couple of projects that'll be fun to do. Besides going through all my books and taking a look at them, I spent a lot of time watching all my favorite booktubers talk about their favorite books of 2020. It was so much fun. You guys really read some great stuff. So I decided I'm going to start reading some of the favorites off of all my favorite booktubers, not all, but my favorite booktubers lists. And you know, it'll be easy to get those books because even if they were put out this year, they're not brand new, and they'll be easy to check out electronically from my library. I won't have to wait. And in fact, I've already got about 30 on my list from people's end of year videos that I want to talk about. I'm going to start that in a couple days. Meanwhile, I thought today I'd just kind of finish up the books that I was thinking about and another project that I got roped into or decided to do. First of all, as I was looking through, I saw that there's a new reading project put on by a group of people called Invisible City Project. And I wasn't sure what it was. I did read, and I put a link to the main person below that talks about it. Invisible Cities. I realized I had a book by that name. I never read it. I've had it for years, so I pulled it out and started reading it. And actually, the project is about taking a different book that's been translated each month. You get 3 countries each month to choose from. But and I've already done that too, which you'll hear about in a minute. But I want to say, Invisible Cities itself it's really been a fun read for me, by Calvino, Italian writer. It's been out for, I think it was probably put out first in the 60s or 70s. And it's just a good book. It's very different. It actually deals with the real life characters of Marco Polo, the big world traveler from Venice, and Kublai Khan, the emperor of the Tartars. And those two did, in fact, historically come into contact with each other. And Kublai Khan was old and couldn't travel and was wondering about the world. So he sent out Marco Polo to give him reports on what he saw when he traveled the world and the cities. So this book is a little bit of magic realism. Supposedly the tales that Marco Polo tells Kublai Khan about the different cities he sees. And I love being able to picture settings and the way he pictures it. I mean, they're like cities you'd dream about with impossible passages and everything, but they're so fun to read about. And then the guys talk about the cities, and it's just really hits the spot right now. I'm reading it very slowly. I just cover like one city a day. I mean, it fills my brain, so I don't want to read that any faster. But that in itself is good. I'm sure that must be what the project is named after. And then I went ahead and chose my book to read for the year. Now this month they're reading something from Japan or Morocco or Argentina. And I'm looking through my shelves to see if I have books to go for these things without running out and buying new ones. And I did, in fact, have an older book that I've had again for years called Hopscotch by Argentinian writer Cortazar, and the Times Literary Supplement even calls it the first great novel of Spanish America. So I'd heard about it. I know it was kind of not experimental or innovative. And I took a look at it, and I think it's really going to be good. The basic story starts with a writer who guy's a writer. He's from Argentina, but he lives in Paris, and he has a mistress named La Maga who's quite a piece of work. And it starts there in Paris, wonderful scenery of Paris, the feeling of Paris. Now, I understand he's going to go to different places. He's going to go back to Argentina. He's going to have all kinds of adventures. But the thing about this book is that the author tells you right at the first, there are two ways to read this. You can read it right through, which I'm going to do from the start, or he gives you an alternate way to read it with a list of chapters in the order that you read it. And I suppose that'll give you a different story. I don't know. But I'm really enjoying it so far, doing it the regular way. So I have all month to read this, so you'll be hearing more about this. Okay, just a couple more books I came on to as I was going through my shelves that I always said I would read someday, and interesting when I found out. One of them is called, this is from the 60s, this is called An Unknown Woman. It's a memoir by Alice Koller. And it's the story, she was I guess a professor, but jobless. And she was somewhere in her 30s, and she decided she needed to go off by herself and just figure out the world and figure out what she wanted to do with herself. There's a little bit of reference there to Thoreau and his Walden Pond, where he goes off by himself. And when I read this in my 30s, I thought it was a wonderful idea. She went to Nantucket and got a beach house, was there for all winter by herself and thought about things, what she wanted to do with her life. And that just seemed so romantic to me back then. But right now, it does not seem fun at all to go off by yourself somewhere for the whole winter. No, not something I want to do. And plus, I realize I've grown up a lot since then. I don't really need to spend the time figuring out who I am. I just need more time for reading. Anyway, but that was a fun look back at me and a book that I'd always said I'd read again. Okay, a couple more that I got. I love spy novels. I like the 1960 type spy novels by John le Carré about the Cold War, and I've, over the years, when I go to used bookstores, have collected things that look like they might be spy novels. Well, this one's called Tremor Vincent, and it's by Anthony Burgess, who wrote Clockwork Orange, so he's not a typical spy author. But anyway, so I started it. It was a little bit of a surprise. It looked good. It's about a aging British secret agent who is sent to Russia to get his friend who is defected to Russia and bring him back. That sounded like, have a lot of good action and stuff, but no, this turns out to be kind of a spoof on spy novels. And he uses all his comic potential and black humor, and it just wasn't what I really wanted right then. I want some spy novels. So anyway, I read some of it, but it just wasn't me. Okay, again, one more that I picked out was the stories of Jane Gardam. I had picked up this book, again, used somewhere in most of my books. That's where they picked them up, because I had read a trilogy by her, and it was kind of about spies. From a woman's point of view, it wasn't real hard violence type thing. But the first one was called Old Filth, and it mentions here that she won the Whitbread Award for her Old Filth trilogy, which used to be, I believe, what the Women's Prize is now. I'm not sure. But anyway, Old Filth incidentally is not what it sounds like. The filth calls for failed in London, try Hong Kong, and it's kind of a spook on what you do with old spies that no longer do it in the guy. In fact, it does open up in Hong Kong, and I really enjoyed the trilogy. So I thought I'll try some of her short stories, and they're not spy they're not about spies, but they are really good. They're I would call them old-fashioned kind that actually have an ending and a story that was kind of relieving to do. But there's one story that is so good. I just have to tell you a little bit about it. It's quite long. It might be published by itself, but it was called the SIDMOUTH Letters. And just briefly, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's about a young woman in a going to school to have a PhD in English, and she has in a writing class and turns in a piece of writing to her professor, who's a well-known ladies' man and quite the, and he kind of hurts her feelings and gives it back to her and said, well, this is okay, but you need to change a lot of things. And then for some reason she leaves and she doesn't really see him again, but she follows him. He becomes quite famous as a writer, and she also becomes quite famous. And all along, we know that one of his best books was what he stole directly from her back in the days before they could catch plagiarism and things like that. And it's so cool how she gets him back in the end in the most complex literary type way. So that was really good. And the others are good on this one too. So I'm going to go and start reading some of you Booktubers favorites and come back in a few days and start talking about those. So you never know who I'm going to pick. Could be you. Bye.